Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 7 o'clock here in the morning, Saturday morning, September the 24th. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and we're on for an hour. I don't usually do these shows on Saturday mornings, but I switched up my show schedule to Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays, and for One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. And so hopefully, you get something out of this. I know I'm learning as I go, and I'm working on the inner child healing work right now. And we've been looking at in the mornings at Robert Burney's web pages from Joy to Me and You, www.joy2meu.com. Probably for about 3.5 months, maybe now. And really looking at codependency, inner child healing work, and this kind of stuff, which was very it's what I'm working on. So that's good information for me. So hopefully it's helping other people too. Robert Burney, he's awesome. We're going to actually not do his stuff today. I'm going to pick that back up on Tuesday morning. What I wanted to look at was John Bradshaw's stuff, and that's homecoming, reclaiming and healing your inner child, because that's what I'm working on right now is my inner child healing work, like throughout the week, during the week, Monday through Sunday, or Sunday through Saturday, however you want to look at it. 7 days a week, I'm kind of doing work on my inner child healing, and some days I have a little bit more time to work through some of the stuff. And other days I run out of time. But usually by the weekend I've done some work, and that's why I thought that I'd go through and sort of show people the process that I'm going through and what it's doing for me, for as far as helping my helping my inner child, my inner children actually to feel better about what happened to them, because I really hadn't grieved any of the wounds. I hadn't done any of the work, looking back at that stuff. I was just looking at it and able to talk about it. Obviously, I can talk about my past. That's what I've been doing on these shows. But that's not to talk about the emotional stuff, or what allowing my inner child, my inner voice to come out and say, how it made me feel at that time, at that age, right? So that's what I kind of want to look at here today, and probably on Saturdays, that's what I'll be doing. So, hopefully other people will get something out of it. Not everybody's doing inner child healing work. I know I didn't start mine I didn't actually even start looking into it till about 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago now. And I was always kind of aware that I had this inner child, at least one. And this inner child was screaming and raging, really. For years and years and years, because I had silenced her. I had shoved her down so far down inside of myself, really, just because I couldn't deal with with all that pain and that sorrow, that grief. I had been grieving other things, but not my childhood. So I'm still working on that. And so this inner child of mine was just raging, and so I noticed that when I was in my 30s, especially, that I knew I had this inner child that was just so wounded. It was still there, so wounded, and so really didn't do anything until I started my healing journey at the age of 41, and it's been 4.5 years now. I've been on my healing journey, and I realized, about at least 8 months ago, that I was going to have to do the work in order to help myself, because I could still feel that I had these inner children, and could actually see that I had at least 3, and now that I'm looking at it, I have a lot more than that. Places where I got wounded, traumatized as a child, and then got stuck there with those same painful emotions, the same feelings that I was never allowed to express and never allowed to work through. So that's what I'm doing, working on my inner child. So it is helping me a lot. I don't have the same kind of flashbacks I was having. I still have the memories, but they're not obtrusive flashbacks that just pop into my head of these horrific things that were done to me as a child. And I could be working, during the day somewhere. I usually work in offices, and I could be working somewhere, and then all of a sudden, just this flashback would just come into my internal, vision and my memory bank, and all of a sudden, I'd be upset because I'd be thinking about this horrible, horrific scene that was replaying in my mind. I don't have those like that anymore. I have the memories. I still recall what happened to me, but I don't have those same obtrusive flashbacks, which is great. So I've made a lot of progress, actually, just working through this stuff. So inner child healing work is where I'm at. So thanks everybody for being here. You have to listen at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse. I'm talking about, a very sensitive subject, right? This is not for younger children. This show is for, for adults. And so if you're 18 and under, I ask that you have an adult listen to the show with you. Somebody who's older, who's an adult, who can help you make a decision whether or not you should be listening, because this material is definitely not for younger children. And Abuse is a sensitive subject, so everyone has to listen at their own discretion. If you're a survivor, you're just starting out on your healing journey, you need to be careful listening to any show like this, whether it's mine or somebody else's, because this type of material can trigger. And so you need to be very careful what you're listening to and know that you're safe enough to listen, that you're not going to hurt yourself or somebody else. You're not going to spiral down backward through your healing journey and go backward in it. You don't want to do that. So be very careful when you're listening to anything like this, my show, anybody else's shows like this, because it can trigger. And so, because I'm talking about abuse, it's a very, very sensitive subject, right? So I say this on every show. I'm not a counselor, not a therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows here. And I'm just a survivor, and I just wanted to bring out as much information to people as I can, to help people, to hopefully help somebody out there who may be struggling, just realize that it is hard, but it is doable. We can do this. And, whether you need professional help or self-help or whatever, or group support, but just make sure you reach out, whatever works for you. What works for me may not work for you. What works for other people may not work for me. We have to find out what's going to work for us, and think about what our needs are as far as our healing journey goes. What we're going to need to help us get through this stuff, especially setting up some tools and coping mechanisms and different things like that. So, you have to listen at your own discretion and be, just if the show bothers you, it's your discretion. You have to turn it off. I'll get right into this. And Robert, like I said, we'll look at Robert Burney's stuff on Tuesday, but I want to go into John Bradshaw's stuff, and I'm actually just going to read through some of the stuff that I was doing. And my good friend Gypsy Witch is here. Hello, Gypsy Witch. I love you, dear. I just want to look at some of the stuff that actually was taking place while I was doing the work in John Bradshaw's Homecoming. Excuse me, my voice is terrible. Reclaiming and healing your inner child, and that's where I want to go today. So I actually have his books. Most of his stuff you can't find online. There was one website that actually covers a lot of his stuff, and it's not his website. It's Hope for Us. HOPE, the number 4 us. That's a website actually from a woman who is actually talking about John Bradshaw's books, Homecoming, Reclaiming and Healing Your Inner Child, as well as Healing the Shame That Binds You. So that's really the only website that I've seen out there that actually covers his stuff and talks about it. But I got the books because, thankfully, I got a gift card for a bookstore and for working at this company for 6 months, contract work. And these guys, when I left, they gave me some gifts and, for some parting gifts because they were happy with the work that I did, which was awesome. And they gave me a book a gift card, right? So I went immediately to the bookstore and looked for John Bradshaw's books because I've been wanting these for a long time. And so this is awesome. I got his books, but I won't be reading his whole books out here. What I just want to do is I just want to go through the process of what I've been doing and talk about what it's done for me as far as my inner child work goes, right? Because I started out knowing nothing. I'm on my own. I'm on a healing journey that really is my own, except for, I've got a good friend helping me out, Gypsy Witch. And Gypsy Witch is, works with survivors and works with people who are DID and works with people who have suffered, traumatic, abusive pasts and in Australia. And she's working with me on visualizations, and these visualizations come from another woman called Beverly Searle, Searle. Beverly Searle is out of Australia, too, so you can check her work out. Hopefully she's going to be on my show here someday soon. I just need to get in touch with her. But this is, along with what Gypsy Witch has been doing to help me out with visualizations. I was doing some work in John Bradshaw's book, and it really has helped me out immensely. And the difference is, I notice the difference because I notice that I don't feel the same levels of pain that I was feeling before inside, this pain in my heart, this pain in my spirit, because my inner children had not been addressed. I had just left them where they were. They were, my 7-year-old was still there, traumatized, at 7 years old. My 8-year-old was still there, being traumatized from the past, because I had never gone in and actually addressed what needed to be addressed, which was to look at what happened to myself, to grieve it, to feel what I needed to feel about it, whether it was feelings of anger, feelings of sadness, feelings of shame, feelings of rage, whatever it was. Allowing myself to, anger mostly, allowing myself to feel that, you know what I mean? Because as a child, I got suspended there because I had to continue to cope. And that's what happens, most adult survivors. when you're a child and you're being abused, you have to be able to continue on through the next day. And basically, you're in survival mode. Children who are abused, we're just living in, we were just living in survival mode, right? And so you get stuck in those points because you never ever get to feel what you need to feel, grieve it. You may not have gotten any help. I know I didn't. And so my little inner children were still there, and they were still very wounded. And so I started to notice this, right? And so as I've been doing these visualizations, it's been great because I've been able to really, get them to a safe place. First of all, that's the visualizations that we did with Gypsy Witch, and getting myself to a safe place that I create that is just special, just for me and my inner children. And it's a safe place where it's an imaginary place in my mind that is set up so that nothing can get in. It's virtually just a safe haven where my inner children are staying. That says you are safe. You are completely safe. No one can ever hurt you again. I'm the adult now, and you're the inner children. You're safe, and I'm the adult, and I can handle everything else going on out here in the world here in the real world. And you're all just going to sit there in your safe place and be well looked after and healed. And as I'm doing this, as we do the visualizations, I can actually go through and talk to my inner children that I know that are there. There's some that are there that I don't know at what ages they are yet. But it's really quite interesting how it works because it has totally helped me out. And what it does is it takes all the pressure off of me to get through my day, my day-to-day stuff here today, without these feelings of despair, and because my inner children are now safe, in this safe place that I created for them. So it's really, really cool how it works. The only drawback is that a person could actually, because if you start feeling pretty good, you could forget about them, because I don't hear their, I've put them in a safe place, so I don't feel the same rage, I don't feel the same, sorrow and depression and stuff going on with it, because they're in a safe place. So it's easy to forget now to actually go back and do the work with them and forget. You could forget about them, and that could be a problem. So they're inner child healing work. I wouldn't suggest this for anybody who isn't completely sure that they want to try this on your own. It's your own deal. I would never suggest it for somebody. I wouldn't suggest any of this stuff for anybody because, everybody needs different things. It's working for me. That's all I know, and it's been helpful for me, a helpful process. But you have to be very careful when you're doing this stuff, because what it does is when you go back and you do John Bradshaw's book, he actually says in here, if you've had any untreated, if you were abused as a child in any way or sexually abused or whatnot, and you were untreated and you haven't had any professional help, not to do his books. That's what he says. But I'm doing them anyway because I know that I'm safe enough to do them. I've already done the ASCA Safety First workbook, and also, looking through the ASCA book. I haven't done the work on it, but I know that I'm safe enough to do this work. But some people, if you're not sure, you need to be very cautious about this kind of stuff, because what it does is you have to go back, and it takes you back really into the point where you were wounded. And that's the point where your inner child is still stuck, and that's where you have to go and actually, basically rescue them and tell them, that everything's fine now, that we're not being abused, that everything's okay, and that we're safe now. But you do have to go back to that point, and some people, it may be very disturbing to go back to that point, So I'm going to start out just talking about what happened when I actually went in to rescue my inner infant, because John Bradshaw takes you through the stages. He's got the inner infant, the inner toddler, inner preschool, inner school-age self, reclaiming your adolescence, your teenager, right? And you go through all these steps, right? It's like a workbook. When you look at it, it doesn't look like a workbook, but when you get inside of it, start looking at it, it really is a workbook. And so as I started doing this was a while back, actually not that long ago, when I started actually doing the real work on John Bradshaw's books, maybe not even a couple of weeks ago, September the 16th is when I actually started looking at my inner infant. And the inner infant is really cool how you do it. And you have to go back and what you have to do is do a certain set of meditations, and these are just simple little meditations, and what it does is it helps you to relax and breathe, do some breathing work so that you can Feel your body in the present, feel your clothing, feel where you're sitting, and identify where you are in the here and now. And then through heavy breathing and just sitting with your eyes closed and relaxed, it relaxes you enough to where you actually can get into your mind, into the center of your mind, to your memories and stuff. And then it takes you back to your old house, right? And this is where a lot of survivors might feel like, oh, I don't want to go there. That's a scary place to be if a person was abused. You go back to the original house where you were born and possibly, brought up in, where the abuse took place. A lot of times, I can imagine survivors would be like, I don't want to go there. It's like, no, don't make me go there. This is only for people who really want to, and are sure enough, that they can do the work without hurting themselves or getting, losing the track of their healing journey and going backward and stuff like that. I would never suggest this for somebody who's not 100% sure, because you do have to go back to the house, right? And so, but I've been doing this for years. I've been able to look at my stuff and I, it's not like I haven't really it's not like I was in complete denial and never looking at it. It's just, this helps me to actually really focus on what I need to focus on instead of random thoughts about the way that I grew up, because I've been talking about my personal story for years now, and I actually wrote books on it. So I'm okay telling, talking about this stuff. I'm okay telling the public about what happened to me, because this is why I'm doing this, because I want people to know. It's always hushed up and it's always shut away, and people just, society doesn't want to hear it because it's distressing, it's disturbing, and it's horrible. And other survivors, they're just like, look, I don't want to hear it. I'm trying to heal, and other people, just about I actually have good friends listening to my shows all the time. Which is awesome. I appreciate that very much. And also, I have some survivors who listen, but I have also some groups of psych students who are studying psychology, listen to my shows as well, because it helps them get a bit of an idea whether they would actually want to do this work or not to help survivors of abuse, right? And so, hopefully that the show is helping somebody. But that's why I do what I'm doing, because I want the public to know. I want the public to know what we've had to go through, what it's like to be an abused child, and what it's like to have to deal with this stuff afterward as an adult survivor, and how hard it really is for a lot of us. And for some people it's harder than others, depends on what you've been through. It depends on your resiliency and how you manage to do it. And lots of survivors are in denial. That's all there is to it. They really can't face the whole thing for whatever reason, and so it's just easier for them to say, look, I'm fine, right? I know how that goes, right? I just want to take a truthful look, and be honest about it, whether I was fine or not. 4.5 years ago, I was planning my suicides, ready to self-injure, and I was sitting on the couch, and I was holding down a full-time job. I've always been able to hold down full-time jobs, and I was like 4.5 years ago, I was like, ready to kill myself again after so many years of wanting to, planning my suicides and wanting to be out of my pain. And I thought, there's nothing right about this picture. People at work, they think, they have no clue that I'm coming home and wanting to kill myself, like I'm not okay. And that's all there is to it. And I decided to actually work on this, and get some help. And I wanted to have a decent, normal life, I changed my behavior patterns, changed my belief systems, but do it honestly instead of going into denial. And so for me, this was about the only way I could do it. But for a lot of people, things are so horrific, that, I don't blame people for doing denial, because sometimes some things are just too hard to deal with. And I know this, I know what people's stories are, and I read a whole lot of survivor stories, and I just know their stories, and, it's absolutely horrific, like what people have gone through. I know, just looking at what my mother went through was enough to cause people to not want to even think about this stuff. And then what I went through on top of that, is enough to make you really not want to deal with this stuff. It's like, man, nobody should ever have to even see this kind of stuff, especially a child, and then know about it and have the knowledge and walk the planet with this kind of evil knowledge, really, in their mind, in their psyche, of knowing what happened to them, their families, and other people that they loved, and knowing possibly that they weren't wanted, they weren't taken care of. It's just absolutely horrific. So, be careful when you're doing this work, because it really does take you back to, to the place where maybe you don't want to go, right? Which is the very scene of the wounding, right? And John Bradshaw's book, you can find it just about everywhere. It's Homecoming, Reclaiming, and Healing Your Inner Child. And the first part of it, was to reclaim your toddler, and you go through, you do a little set of questions first, or an infant. I'm sorry, you reclaim your infant first, and you do this questionnaire first to see if you actually really need to reclaim your infant. Because if you answer a certain portion of the question no, then possibly you don't need to reclaim your infant. If you answer them honestly, right? You have to answer them really honestly, otherwise it doesn't work. If you answer the majority of them or the bigger part of them yes, then probably you were wounded as an infant, right? This is how they do this test, right? And they go through and they do the test for all the different stages: the toddler, the preschool age, the school age, and the adolescent, the teenager, right? So I did the questions, and then he talks about normal infancy and all this stuff, and I'm not going to read through his book, but he talks about the growth disorder part of it. He says we were not loved unconditionally. As a result, we didn't develop a basic sense of trust. And little infants, they need that bonding. They need that bond, especially the maternal bond at that point. They said any child from a dysfunctional family system will feel emotional deprivation and abandonment, and there's no way you could grieve this in infancy. See, as an infant, there's no way that you could grieve that stuff. But what's really, I'll keep going, I'll just keep reading. It says when a person has been through severe trauma, it's important that they take the time to talk about it. Debriefing is not original pain work. It is not yet experiencing the original feelings. However, it is the way to begin our original pain work. So debriefing, you have to, when you're doing this process, debrief the situation, your infancy, your toddler age, your preschool age. You debrief what was happening at the time, who was around, what historically, as what kind of memories you may have, or just hearing from other people what was happening, gut instincts about what was going on in the home. This is for people who were abused as children, right? And you write this down, and this is debriefing. Feeling the feelings, he says, if you're a lost child, you probably already had some feelings about your infancy. If you have a picture of yourself as an infant, take a long look at it. If you don't have a picture, find an infant, spend some time watching them, because he goes through and he talks about what it is like to be an infant, And I don't have any infancy pictures. I don't have any pictures. There was only one baby picture taken of me, and that was the neighbors actually took me to go get that picture taken, and because my parents weren't doing any of that stuff, right? And so this was back in the the 60s, right? I was born in 65, and people, I don't know, some people were probably taking pictures of their kids at that time, but my parents weren't, and my parents were too busy bashing each other and killing each other, trying to kill each other and destroy each other. So these neighbors took me to get a little baby picture done, and when I was about 6 months old. But there's no other pictures of me at all until I got to be about 4 or 5. And then there's only a couple pictures taken. And then when I started school when I was just turning, I was just 4, but I was going to turn 5. But I started school very young to get out of the house, right? They suggested to my mother that she put me in school early just because it was safer, much safer environment. And so I went to school early, skipped preschool, kindergarten, went right into first grade, and that was a horrible experience. I was just not used to being around. I wasn't used to being around anybody except for my own abusive family. And I went into this classroom and I had to deal with these other people that I thought were going to abuse me too, because that's all I knew. So I was crying all the time and miserable, and my teacher didn't like me, was calling me a crybaby and stuff. But we'll get over to that when we do the other stuff, looking at school age. But there's no pictures taken, right? So I don't have a picture of myself as an infant. I really don't know what I look like. And but I came in a preemie, underweight, about 2.5, 3 pounds, nearly dead. They had to take me out because I was dying. My mother was dying. We were both dying. And so they put me in an incubator for the first, I forget how many weeks, 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. And then I came home from the hospital before my mother made it home, because my mother was in a coma. So it was a harsh start, And then my mom said when I was a tiny baby, she used to tell me stuff like, I was afraid to pick you up because you were too small. Because I was too small, I actually fit in her hand, So she was afraid to pick me up, so she put me in the bottom of a drawer. In one of the dresser drawers, she just blankets there and put me in the bottom of the drawer so that I wouldn't get hurt, because there were 6 kids around, or actually 5 kids romping around that place, 4, and she was afraid I'd get hurt, so she just kind of kept me in a drawer, which is kind of bizarre. But I guess it worked. So, I don't have it much on my infancy, but when I went back to do this work that Robert Burney has set up here. First, what you do is you write letters, and you have to write a letter. I had to write a letter to myself as an infant. And so this letter that I wrote to myself as an infant, I'll just read to you. I said, to you, my precious baby Lori, I love you, baby Lori. I am so happy you are born and are a beautiful, healthy girl. I promise to take good care of you, to love you unconditionally. I promise to never leave you. I will always be with you and help you, comfort you. I will give you all the time you need to grow and grow up. I will be patient with you, treat you tenderly with respect and dignity. I know what your needs are, and I'm fully capable of meeting them. I love you, my precious baby Lori. Welcome to the world, Big Lori. And then what you have to do, Robert Burney. John Bradshaw says that you have to write a letter using your non-dominant hand, which would be, I'm left-handed, so I had to use my right hand to write for my inner child. And you use your non-dominant hand, whatever your non-dominant hand is, and you write a letter to your big self from the infant, right? So my infant self wrote myself a letter back, and in my right with my non-dominant hand. And I said, hi, Big Lori, can you help me? I need to be loved. I need to be wanted. I need to be held, rocked, burped, cleaned, fed, and kissed on top of my head. Before you came and got me, I was so scared and alone. Now I am with Blue Angel, and she is good to me. Can you come and see me? Can you come and hold me too? I want you to come and hold me every day. Thank you, baby Lori. That's what she wrote. I didn't write that. Like, as I was doing the work here, and my non-dominant hand was writing, which is hard to read my handwriting, because with my non-dominant hand, for sure, it's hard, and my writing's not good anyway. And it's really quite interesting to see what came out, because I wasn't thinking about that stuff when she wrote that. So that was my inner child talking back to me, saying, I want you to hold me. Saying what my inner child needed. She was telling me what she needed. And I think that is so cool. So then I wrote a little letter back to her, and I said, yes, baby Lori, I will do that. I promise to do all these things. I love you, my sweet baby Lori. And then, so that was the letters, right? Then you do the inner infant meditation, and you do some positive affirmations. And John Bradshaw, he has some great affirmations here for inner infant work. Like we're supposed to tell our inner infant that, that we're welcoming to the world, right? Many times children who are born into abusive homes aren't really welcome, and they really may be made to feel like they were an accident or not wanted. Like myself, I was made to feel like I was told that I wasn't wanted, and that I was a raped child, and that my mother wished I had died, and all this stuff. And I talk about this a lot on my shows. So you're supposed to say positive affirmations to your inner infant, like, welcome to the world, I've been waiting for you, I'm so glad you're here, I've prepared a special place for you to live, I like you just the way you are, I will not leave you no matter what, your needs are okay with me, and I'll give you all the time you need to get your needs met, I'm so glad you're a boy or a girl, whichever, I want to take care of you, and I'm prepared to do that, I like feeding you, bathing you, changing you, spending time with you. In all the world there has never been another like you, and God smiled when you were born. That's an inner infant positive affirmations that he has there, and you can make up your own if you want to. But I just used his. And so I went through the affirmations. I spent about, I'd say about an hour and a half probably doing this inner infant one. The inner infant meditation, he says you'll need an hour for this uninterrupted, right? And that's where he says, if you've been diagnosed mentally ill or have a history of mental illness, if you're an untreated victim of physical or sexual violence, including rape, if you were severely battered emotionally, if you're a recovering chemical addict without a year of continuous sobriety, and if you do not have your therapist's permission, he says, don't do this stuff. Don't do these inner child healing work, on your own, because it's so serious that, he's really trying to make sure that people are aware that it is definitely only something that people should do if they're really self-aware, and that they can actually do the work, and there's not going to be any problem with it, that they're going to be able to cope with what they see, cope with what they find out, because what this work does is it gets you in touch with feelings and stuff and emotions and thoughts and visions, really, mental pictures that you may have not have thought about for so long. Because most of us have been abused, would tuck these things away nice and tight somewhere, put them in a box so that we don't have to look at them, right? That's so that we can cope and move on throughout the years, And each time our little wounded child, got wounded, we just put it in a box, locked the box up, put the key away or threw the key away, said, I can't deal with that now, I can't look at that now, so I'm going to have to move on because I have to survive. And I don't have time to grieve this because, I know in my home, if we were caught crying or grieving, we were beaten for it. If my mother came and if I was crying because my mother would say, "Oh, get away from me, you rape child, I hate you," and I started crying if she was pushing me or pushed me away or something, then she would get really irate and she'd be like, "You better stop crying right now, or I'm going to beat you again, or I'll beat you some more, or I'll give you something to cry about." That was her thing. And that's what most parents tell their kids. I'll give you something to cry about, you know what I mean? But my mother meant business, and she was my main wounder, when I was little. She was my main abuser. And my dad didn't have much to do with me because he was too busy attacking his sons and my mother, right? And so, I knew, some of this stuff, is really, really disturbing. And when you go back and you actually look at this stuff, it gets you in touch with feelings and stuff that you may have put away for a long, long time. So John Bradshaw is absolutely correct. Don't do this work if you're not sure you can do it. So you go through and you do this meditation, and this meditation is just really gets you in touch with with yourself first of all, and puts you in a sort of a relaxed state so that your mind can actually focus on what it needs to focus on. And then it's really simple. Like it only took me about 7 minutes or something. And then and then what he says is, as you can now begin experiencing some childhood memories. He says you can remember your first school days, your best friend in those days. You can remember a kind teacher or neighbor. You can remember a house you lived in before you went to school. This is how he sets it up. So that your mind is traveling back through, and you can actually remember your old childhood friends and your old first, school, your first roof, your first house, your first room, right? These types of things. He says, what color was the house? Was it an apartment, a trailer? Did you live in the city, the country? He says, now you can see some of the rooms in the house, right? And where did you spend your time in that house? We're supposed to go back to the very first house that we grew up in, right? Because this is getting a hold of the inner infant, right? So this is wherever we were when we were born as an infant, right? Wherever we grew up, right? And so he says, where did you spend your time in that house? Did you have a special room? Where was the dinner table? See who was at the dinner table. What did it feel like to be at the table? What did it feel like to live in the house, right? And then that's the general setup for each one of the inner children that we go through and reclaim, and that's the toddler or preschool or what. Then for the inner infant, it says, now imagine or remember the house your family lived in when you were born, and imagine the room where you slept after you were born, and see the beautiful infant you were. Hear your voice as you coo, cry, laugh. Imagine you could hold your cuddly little self, and you are there as a wise, gentle person, right? Whoever you are, saving yourself, right? So you can set yourself up with a wizard or, something like that, or an angel or whatever, or you can just be yourself, right? I'm just myself when I go to rescue myself. You are viewing your own infancy. Who else is there? Your mom, your dad? See, this is where this kind of stuff really can cause people a lot of pain because, what this allowed me to do was get in touch with my inner infant, and I could see myself in that room that I know that I was in when I was an infant. And I can see myself, and I remember the feelings all of a sudden. I was like, wow, I forgot about those feelings, of being afraid and laying there as an infant, afraid of the clothes on the back of the door, because there was a lot of fighting going on in my home. A lot of my parents had a lot of domestic violence and stuff going on. And not only that, but that was the period of time where my dad was abusing my brothers horrifically, and that's why the social workers got involved. And so this was a couple of years before the social workers got involved. And so this as an infant, I never even really thought about how I felt as an infant, even though the memories were there. It didn't really, I didn't think about it too much, right? So what this did is it got me in touch with this because it's meditation. You're pretty deep into it, and what I did was I recorded this on a voice recorder because you have to have either somebody read it to you, or you need to have a voice recorder or some sort of a recorder machine that you can record these meditations on, and then you play it back to yourself. And you have to do it so that you can relax and get into it. But that's why you have to be very careful when you do this stuff. I wouldn't suggest this for anybody. I really wouldn't. I'm okay to do it, but that doesn't mean that everybody would be. And so if you have a therapist or counselor, check with them, to make sure that you're in a safe enough place to do it. And if you're just not sure, do you think you might self-injure or kill yourself or hurt somebody else or go off on a rampage or start doing drugs again or anything like this, then don't do it. You have to be completely sure that you're okay to do this work, right? Because it does take you back to those painful places, right? So, basically what you do is just, imagine yourself, pick yourself up, right? And then you tell them all the affirmations. You say, welcome to the world. I've been waiting for you. So you're holding your infant self, and your infant self then looks up at you as the big glory, the big person. And you can see the love, and that inner infant feels love and warmth, and is told that they're wanted and loved, and it's just a way to reclaim your little infant self, right? And then what he does is walks you back through some of your teenage stuff, and then your adult memory, and then takes you right back to the chair or to wherever you're sitting in the moment, and that's the meditation. But it is really, really cool. And it did work for me, let me tell you. Then what you do is you sit for a while, let yourself reflect on the experience, and feel whatever you need to feel. He says, pay attention to the affirmations and that touched you the most. Reflect on those words, letting yourself feel the nourishment of them. And he says, if you've had an angry reaction, let yourself feel the anger. He says, you may have thought, this is just nuts. I don't, is this really going to help me, sort of thing. He says, write down your thoughts and impressions, right? And if you have a friend going through the book with you, which is always, I think, the best way to do it, he says, or a group, like group support. He says he has it set up so that groups can do this, or even a partner, or a spouse, or a friend who's going through this with you, right? You can have them do the visualizations with you while you're doing them, right? They can read out the stuff to you, and you can just do the work, right? It's a little harder on your own. I'm doing mine with a voice recorder, right? But it works. Excuse me. So then you write down. You write down what you could see. He says sometimes people cannot see, hear, or feel their wounded inner child, right? He says, I've found that the reason for this is that during the exercise they are the child, and they are actually in their wounded child state. If that happened to you, just go back and do the meditation again. So sometimes people can't see their inner child in the whole thing, and it's because they are the inner child. so there's no way to get in touch with the adult person because they're the inner child. So you need to be able to kind of be both, right? And you need to be able to see your inner child in there. If you can't see your inner child, you just have to go back and redo the meditation, right? And not look at the child, not be that wounded child, be the adult you looking at your inner wounded child, right? And for me, it's easy enough. I could see, I knew I already had one there. I knew that I had a 7-year-old there. The reason I know how old she is because I remember the pants and the sandals and the top that she has on is when I was 7 years old. That was my favorite outfit. And it was a pair of red pants. It was cool, like back in in the 70s, right? 7 years old, 1972. Polyester was in, and I had these red pants, awesome, bright cherry red pants. I love those things. I had these. I dress the most bizarre way. I still do, actually. I'm not a fashion nightmare, actually. But I had these red pants with these cool white sandals, and I had this top that had no matching colors to it. Like there was a purple sleeve, a green sleeve, and then the middle part was all different pieces of different colors. Like one was like a tan color, and the other one was like orange, and then on the back I had some other colors too. And then with these red pants, and I look like a fashion nightmare, and I've always actually been like that. It's just my personality. And so I love that outfit. And so that's my inner child is actually wearing that outfit. That's why I know she's 7 years old. And that's where I know, at that point, that's the one that I could see first. And then I realized that there was, the 8-year-old was there. And that's when I really started looking in. And the 8-year-old is the one who was raped and sodomized, and she was still there. She was still suffering. She was still hurting. She was still bleeding. She was still suffering. She was still on the bed there where I was actually sexually assaulted. So this is very disturbing. And, and I knew that. And I knew I have to get in touch with her. I thought, oh, my God, I have to be able to get in touch with her and get her to safety, This is I don't know, this inner child healing work it's been very helpful for me. I can't say whether it would help somebody else. All I know is it's helping me out, So then once you do that, you sit back and think about the meditation that you just went through with your inner infant. And then, if you're working with a group, there's a whole set of instructions on what to do, right? But here's what I did was I actually wrote down what happened after the meditation, right? What actually during it and after. So inner infant meditation, he says, I actually wrote this. While doing the meditation, my inner infant was laying in the crib in the boys' bedroom. Mom's dresses on the back of the door scared me. Dark shadows. I cry and no one comes. I'm alone and no one comes to comfort me. This house is scary. Mom and Dad are scary. Brother is scary. Loud noises, shouting voices, screaming makes me cry and tremble and shake and to be afraid of the clothes on the door and afraid of Mother. When Mother bathes me, the water is too hot. and she is rough with me. And she bathes me in the kitchen sink. When she is feeling me, she is rough and uninterested. She has no time for me. She does not pick me up and hold me, only when she must to feed me, to bathe me. She does not kiss me on the head. She does not play with me. Mommy doesn't want me. She is sick. Mommy is tired, sick, angry, unhappy, and she is not happy I am here. She says I'm a burden. Mommy rejects me, and I am too much to deal with, and just another burden. That's what I saw when I did the actual meditation. And that was feelings and stuff that I had totally put in the way back of my mind, that I knew about this. This is not like it wasn't a reality for me. I mean, it's just the fact that I was actually able to see it from my inner infant eyes, and I actually remembered being in the sink. My mother used to bathe me in the kitchen sink, and the water would be too hot, and she'd be like really rough. My mother she was in this horrific marriage. She hated her husband, she hated her kids. She hated herself. She hated life. She was abused as a child in this abusive marriage, and I was a rape child. So, I was just forced upon her, right, by my dad forcing himself on her, because my dad was forcing himself on her for years because she refused to sleep with him after my brother was born. And then he was 7 years older than me. For 7 years he had been raping her, and probably longer than that, actually. I mean, raping her. And so the brothers, my older siblings, would try to protect her. And then I took on that role later on after, right, because that's what I saw them doing, so I just took that role on, even though she was my main abuser, right. As far as my main abuser, I mean, I'm talking like my mother was the one who really hurt my spirit. She hurt my soul, because she didn't care. She didn't care that she was hurting me. She didn't care that she was destroying me as a child, and she didn't care that my brother did what he did and raped me and sodomized me, sexually used me. She didn't care about me at all. And and she used to kind of favor my sister, who is 5 years older than me, because my sister was sick when she was born, right? Well, so was I. But see, and my sister was born out of rape too. Well, so was I. But mother would never tell my sister that she was born out of rape, and she wouldn't hit her like she would hit me. She did slap her around a little bit, and my sister, but I never ever once saw my sister be beaten on like my mother would beat me. Would drag me around and punch me and slap me in the face, knock me to the ground, and just let me have it, She would never do that to my sister, not ever. And for some reason, my sister. And it wasn't because my sister was a goody two-shoes or actually doing anything for her. My sister was actually very quiet in the background, not saying anything. I think my mother, for some reason, just took a liking to her, And my mother, when I was born, actually had so much hatred in her heart, she couldn't love me at all, And she made it very clear that she didn't, and that she wished I was dead. So you can imagine growing up, from infancy through toddlerhood, through preschool and into school age, knowing that your mother hates you and wants you dead, and her, and then beaten and abused, and watching people being beaten. I mean, I saw so much violence in my home, and then watching my dad rape my mother one night, because he just wanted to have his way, and he didn't care if I was in the living room on the couch or not. But I was just a little kid, and I was actually sleeping on the couch. My mom was like, "Lori's on the couch, and get away from me." And she was fighting him off, and he was just like, no, he was going to get what he wanted. So it's a lot of sexual violence and just a whole lot of garbage. And so when I went back to my inner infant, I just found that there was so much stuff that I had actually put away. It's not that I didn't remember or didn't have the memories of it. I just I had just locked it away. The fact that my mother was rough with me when I was a baby, and that I was afraid of that room and afraid of that house, and I knew that. I was afraid of the door because what was going on behind the door in the living room and the rest of the house while I was in that bedroom sleeping in my little crib there in the boys' room, which was ridiculous, but that's the real case. There was fighting going on, people shouting. I remember distinctly clear noises of dishes breaking and glass breaking, right? Sounds of glass breaking. And that would have been pretty normal because my parents were always busting things and throwing dishes. My mom was especially famous for throwing dishes at people, including myself when I got older, and just busting things, busting furniture, throwing furniture. It was a destructive, violent home, right? So I was always afraid of what was going on outside beyond the door. But on the back of the door was my mother's dresses because my mom didn't have anywhere to hang her clothes, and there was a hook on the back of the door. And my mom's dresses were there, and I thought that was where the source of the noise was coming from, was these eerie-looking, shadowy dresses, because I was just a baby, right? And these dresses were, to me, what represented this loud, crazy stuff going on, and it scared me. And I was always petrified of, and looking at that door and just wondering, like, was it going to come in the room where I was, and was it just going to stay by the door, or, these weird thoughts, coming through. But this is the stuff that I had sort of forgotten about, and just didn't think about. So this inner infant stuff allowed me to get in touch with that. So after I wrote that, I wrote Reclaiming Little Baby Lori. I went and picked up Baby Lori, cuddled her, kissed her, told her I loved her and all the affirmations. She smiled and was happy and comforted, and told me that she is okay with the Blue Angel, and I still need to go and be with her and spend time with her. And she told me all of the info above, and we cried together. And I rocked her and played music for her, and we said goodnight. And she's glad to be rescued by me, and glad that I love her. Yeah. So that's what I wrote there. And then what you can do is actually the next step. There's some steps here, to do this work, and it's really quite cool. You can go through and there's the 3 P's. There's potency, and you can tell the 3 P's, which is to help your inner infant to see that you're a strong adult now. That I'm okay. I'm perfectly capable of looking after my inner infant now, and that I have all the power that I need to do this, right? And that way they trust you, and they feel like, okay, my inner infant, knows that, okay, I'm safe. I can do this, right? It's basically reaffirming that we can deal with this stuff. We can cope, and we can get help, and we can help ourselves, and we can help our inner children, right? And so it just sets up a positive, I guess, way of looking at things. Potency, permission, and protection is some of the stuff that we need to do when we're going through looking at, rescuing or reclaiming our inner children, right? And he says, for the potency list is list the things that you now own or capable of doing that you could not own or do as a child, right? For instance, owning a car, driving a car, having a bank account, having money in it, buying all the ice cream and candy you want, buy myself interesting toys, have my own apartment, do whatever I want to do, go to movies without asking permission, buy a pet if I want to, he says. Now close your eyes and see your inner child, child, right? So my inner infant, and let him appear at whatever age he appears. This is what you do after you rescue all of your inner children, right? And you can also ask for them forgiveness, and you can write this down. One way to write a letter of forgiveness from your inner child, right, for leaving them and for not paying attention to them and just putting them away and not thinking about them, right? So I wrote a letter to my inner infant asking for forgiveness, and I said, "Precious baby Lori, I'm sorry you were left on your own and I forgot about you. You were so lonely and frightened and confused, and I left you there and did not do the right thing and bring you with me. I love you, baby Lori, and I promise to never leave you or forget about you again. I can look after all of us, and that most definitely includes you. I love you, care about you, baby Lori. I will protect you and have you and be here for you from now on. Hugs and kisses, Big Lori." And then Baby Lori wrote back and said, "It's okay, Big Lori. Please don't forget me again. I need you and love you." That's what my inner infant wrote back. So it's really, really interesting. I mean, how it works, right? It's very, very interesting. But then there's a lot of other stuff that you do along with this, and this is those are just some parts of it, right? And making anchors is another one, which I'm actually learning how to do. Anchoring, because that helps with the flashbacks. That helps with the traumatic scenes, right? But that's like John Bradshaw said, man. You got to be so sure that you can do this work before you embark on it, because it takes you back to the original source of the wounding. And man, it's sometimes a hard place to go. I know when I go through and I do the work with my inner child who was raped and sexually used by my brother, I'm going to have to go through this, And I mean, I've already really done that. But the thing is I'm going to have to go through and spend more time in it. And sometimes, survivors who've been abused don't want to do that. It's kind of like, man, I don't want to go back there. That was painful and that hurts, and that still hurts me today, and I don't want to see that, And so sometimes people just can't do that. And, and then that's especially on their own, possibly just need therapy or a therapist or somebody or whatever. I mean, whatever works for you. Group support. I mean, I like group support because I think there's safety in numbers. I like to think that anyway, right? Because I don't trust one-on-one stuff usually, and I don't trust somebody else with my stuff. You know what I mean? Because I don't trust people. I grew up in the most heinous situation. That's why I wish I would really like to make a movie. I wish that somebody would make my movie because I could paint it out exactly what it was like, And it wasn't the worst. I'm sure that there's people out there I know there's people out there who suffered and went through worse than I did. You know what I mean? And and I know this, and that's sad. That is very sad, But I also know what it was like for me to grow up in that place and how it went from bad to worse to worse to worse, And just growing up like that, it's no wonder I don't trust people, And you really can't. You can't go around just because I hear so many survivors and so many therapists saying, "Oh, you have to learn how to trust. Have to learn to trust everybody." It's like, no, you don't. There's people out there that will hurt you. My parents were two of them. There's people out there that would love to get a hold of you and hurt you and take advantage of you, and you cannot trust everybody. But you know what we have to do? And this is what I do, is I give people the benefit of the doubt. And in order to have a relationship with somebody, I clearly have boundaries set. And if somebody crosses my boundaries and they don't make amends and try to apologize and they do something that hurts me and they don't do the right thing, they're very quickly out of my life, just marched out the door, because I'm like, I've got no time for that. I'm just very careful about who I let into my life, and I just don't trust everybody. No, you really can't. And so you need to guard yourself. People would say, "Oh, but I need to break down the walls." You need to break down the walls as far as not letting anybody in. But, you need to be very cautious about who you let in. Excuse me. Because there's nothing like being re-victimized. There's nothing like already being so hurt and so wounded and so literally so destroyed as a child, and then, putting these walls up and erecting these safety mechanisms, that keep us rather isolated and lonely. And then, tear down those walls and break down those barriers and then be completely destroyed again. Just doesn't make any sense to me. I think the thing to do is set boundaries, do boundary work. And boundary work is you can find boundary work online. And there's boundary work actually listed on the Child Abuse Monument, Michael C. Irving's website. And the Child Abuse Survivor Monument up here in Canada. Michael C. Irving. He's a sculptor and he's a therapist. He's a psychotherapist actually, but he's a survivor of abuse. So he knows, man, where people are coming from, and he knows what kids go through. And so he has a great website, Child Abuse Survivor Monument, and you can just type that into your browser. It will bring it up, or you can type in Michael C. Irving, IRVING. And on his website, there's a whole adult survivor issue area with adult self-care and stuff, adult survivor self-care, and all kinds of things. And there is boundary work on there. And he actually goes through and talks about a whole lot about boundaries and how to set them and what we need to do to set them. Because my boundaries won't be the same as somebody else's boundaries. We have to do our own boundary work, right? And so I set some pretty serious boundaries, man, and there is nobody crossing these boundaries. Like, I've got my boundaries set so solid, they're like concrete. They're like steel. You can't bend them, you can't break them, you can't burn them. They're like steel boundaries. And nobody crosses them. They just can't, right? And it's unfortunate. I've lost a lot of friends, right? But you know what? Were they really friends? I don't think so. Are they here for me today? Nope. Did they hurt me? Yep. Did they apologize? Nope. Why would I want to keep them in my life? Right? Makes no sense to keep abusive, toxic, dysfunctional people around. And that's what I really like about Robert Burney as well. Because Robert Burney, he's got some great stuff on his website. They're talking about dysfunctional, codependent, toxic relationships. But John Bradshaw does too. These two guys, I really like their stuff. And, Michael C. Irving as well. He's got some great stuff out there. So, we have to be careful who we let into our life. We really do. And we need to know that, if you find a counselor and a therapist who's just making you feel worse and not getting you the help that you need to find another one. That's my suggestion. I think that's everybody's suggestion, actually. You see that everywhere. Even John Bradshaw, Robert Burney, all those guys, they all say the same thing. You find a counselor who's just not clicking with you and they're just making you feel worse, and you find another one. You have every right. You know what I mean? It's you have to be in charge of your healing journey. So that's why I don't trust counselors and therapists. I really don't. And so I can't allow myself to do that work with them. You know what I mean? I'll get through this with friends and my good friend Gypsy Witch and self-help, because I don't trust people. No way. Like, I know how harsh a reality it is, but people are so hurtful, and I just can't deal with trying to let somebody in and have them hurt me. I just can't do it. But I do. I let I let friends into my life. You know what I mean? Until they screw with me, and then once they start screwing with my head, they're gone. Right? I'm like, I got no time for that. I've been so screwed my whole life. I'm tired of it. I refuse to take any more of it. Can't be a decent person. You just can't be in my life. You know what I mean? That's all there is to it. So it just tells you how many decent people there are out there. Not very many, because I've let a whole lot of people out of my life. Just kicked them out the door and shut the door behind them. Don't come back. But I also have some of the most awesome friends because they treat me with respect. Tori and Princess Kaylin and Gypsy Witch and so many other people. I could just name them all. Marie and Liz. There's just so many people that I have and Star, like so much respect for. These are people that are in my life because they genuinely care about me, and they're not asking me for anything. They're not wanting anything. They're not trying to push their garbage on me. They're just there because they care, And it's like right on, you know what I mean? So I just let people in my life who are caring and who are good to me. I'm not going to take any more abuse off of anybody, and I don't care who it is. I got one life to live, and I've been so beaten down, degraded, treated like less than a dog. I was made to sleep in my own throw up. You know what I mean? Like when I was a child, I was like beaten bloody out in the front yard in front of neighbors. Just laying there in the dust, just beaten bloody and just cursed out, told off, spit in my mother used to spit in my face, throw me out of the house. I have been so wounded, and so degraded. Raped and sodomized, just mistreated, as an 8-year-old. You don't do that to a child, Oh, no, right? I have every right to choose who I allow into my life. You bet I do. And I choose good people. That's my choice. And so I do have some heavy-duty boundaries set. But I also don't close myself off. And when somebody actually sends me a friend request on Facebook, I more than likely take it. Because I could use all the friends I can get. But I certain people, if they think that they're going to try to take advantage of me, they got another thing coming. Because I'm like, no, it just doesn't go anywhere. My boundaries are really firmly set. And so, people can only have so much control in my life because I am in control of my life. Thank God for the first time, And so it's important, to protect yourself. And we have to learn how to do that. But it's also important to open up and reach out, right? That's why I always encourage people, don't ever give up, keep reaching out, but reach out to people you can trust. And even, Robert Burney and John Bradshaw and all those guys say the same thing. Make sure these are trustworthy people that you're reaching out to. Make sure that these people aren't going to hurt you worse than you're already hurt, So it's very important to take time to think about things and not rush through things and actually take the time necessary to do this stuff properly, to think about these things and set this stuff up for ourselves so we can learn how to cope, so we can learn how to deal with stuff, So thanks, everybody, for being here, man. I really appreciate this. Gypsy Witch is almost here every show and listens to really every one of my shows. Thank you so much, Gypsy Witch. I just love you so much. And we're going to, next Saturday, I want to take a look at the inner toddler, because today I was just looking at the inner infant there. And I did the work on the inner toddler, and I also did the work on the inner preschool child. And I got a whole lot of interesting information from doing this work. So I hope everybody will tune in just to see how this process, how it's working, you know what I mean? Because it really is working. My inner infant, of course, is only going to know so much, because at that stage, you're just sleeping most of the time, or you're just in there just kind of, wondering what's going on in the big world, but you don't really know because you're just interested in these basic things, you know what I mean? But my inner toddler was able to see so much more, and my inner preschool just so much more, because I have very cognitive memories all the way back, you know what I mean? So it's really quite interesting. So thanks, everybody, for being here. If you have a hard time coping and whatnot, you call a crisis line. You do whatever you have to do. You make sure you keep yourself here, and you look for those better days. There's going to be bad days. There's going to be hurtful days, horrible days. Things like this life, right? That's life. But we can keep that hope alive, and look for those better days. Enjoy them while we have them. Keep reaching out, Don't give up, right? I'll be back on tomorrow. I'll actually be back on here with Worldwide Epidemic of Child Abuse shortly. Then I'll be back on tomorrow with my show Mount Bethel Christian Bible Study, Getting Real with God, and then Tuesday morning back over on one child abuse survivor to another, looking at Robert Burney's webpages, finishing up the inner child work on Robert Burney's webpages on Tuesday. So thanks, everybody, for being here. If you need something, get a hold of me on Facebook or here. I always check my messages. And have a great day. Take good care of yourselves. And I hope you have a really good weekend. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.